Thanks, Valentina. Hi all. So I'm very pleased to be here to come back to a topic that is, well, important for me. I worked for years in Northern Africa. Maybe some of you remember one of my last talk about that topic concerning the interior of the Saharan platform in Algeria. In fact, there is plenty of tidal deposits from the Cambrian to the Upper Cretaceous in that big platform. So basically, I did not go there with the Tunisian colleagues for evaporites, but for seeking for tidal deposits in mostly clastic systems. But it came out that in the Shot Basin, maybe we could have the possibility of looking at the possibility of the record of tides in evaporitic systems. So this is in the frame of collaboration with people from the University of Tunis in the support of 2 PhD which are ongoing. And this is a talk based upon results in the framework of the thesis of Shafia Akrout. So this is the theme. The lower Cretaceous, this is the paleogeography, and you see that big platform. Okay. So Algeria and the Mesozoic of the Saharan Basin in Algeria and Tunisia is somewhere here. So you can appreciate the detail of that paleogeography in which we see a big platform with shelf passing to, what they say, fluvial to coastal plain, marginaux, marin, marginaux, lagunaire. In French, it's a kind of pot, you put everything you want. The only thing which is important, it's very flat, and you cannot see inside valleys in such a system. This is the large-scale second-order eustatic flooding of the lower Cretaceous, and what we record in Tunisia especially, it's that change from fluvio-deltaic systems to coastal plain, and in the meantime, what you see in between, it's the development of, well, coastal stratras. In fact, strata is not a good term because it implies that you have much of it above base level. But, well, anyway, this is the term, and it's plenty of evaporite. I'm going to, show you some results about the Boukhalfa formation, which is a Potterevian perennial. So Tunisia is this. So the Saharan platform is here with beautiful outcrops, especially on the Dar coastal cliff, which is here. This is the only place where you can see a marine Permian in North Africa. So if you move up to the north, it is folded in the Atlas region. Because of those folds are exposing lower Cretaceous in many places, this is where we choose to study that aspect. This is a Shot Basin. By chance, it's also an evaporitic flat, and it's facing a Gulf of Gabes here. It's a big anticlinarium, in fact, so we have a look in this. The Boukhalfa formation is here. This is a kind of master log that where we had to revise for 2 years on basis of new analysis of the microfauna, foraminifera, ostracod, mollusks, indicating a range of sub-environments going from freshwater to hypersaline waters. The lithologies that are here, well, we have 3 lithologies basically, and this is why it's so interesting. This is the typical interstratification we see when we are trying to track the tidalites in non-clastic systems. So the pink is the evaporite, the blue is the carbonite, and then you have the green corresponding to clastic shale and yellow to sandstone, mostly. So the arrow here corresponds to a specific part where the 3 are organized in facious successions that, on the field, form about 20 meters thick groups, at the bottom of which you see, like here, for example, big channels to, in some cases, 10 meters high, with inclined heterotic stratification and cutting down to well, reddish to greenish shades in which we have plenty of leaf remains. Big, well, silicified logs, big trunks, are preserved at the bottom of those channels. And if you move up, you have more and more clay, and then you start seeing dolomite, and then you start seeing also evaporite. So there is a conformable, okay, succession of facies within the outcrop at a scale of a few meters. This is a detail of the interior of the Tidalites within the IHS, and we have numerous clay at the bottom and the top as drapes, and intense ripple cross-bedding with post planes inside. Interestingly, those sand beds are fully impregnated by secondary gypsum, which is the case for most of the facies that we have in the Boukhalfa formation. So moving up, the shade, the upper part of the shade flooding the channel system turns to be frankly green. This is that green shade. We were interested by because it's so green. So the clay analysis that we perform later indicate that in spite of that color, it's mostly carolinite. So they are interstratified with dolomite, normally flat laminated dolomite with typical structure indicating well, algal or microbial mass. Sometimes with a kind of sub-hummocky shape corresponding probably to small stromatolitic structures. And moving up, those greenish clays are going to be interstratified with gypsum, which progressively replaces the dolomite. So the gypsum at the bottom are laminated with an internal structural or finely laminated architecture, and then it goes up to thicker beds and finally totally massive gypsum. So if we take some thin sections of the laminated gypsum, because some of the gypsum are very close to the clastic field of the channels, what we see is the banding at a centimetric scale with dark layers and light layers like this. This is a non-analyzed polarized light, and this is an analyzed polarized light. So we see that the structure is well preserved. The dark laminae are full of small spherules or micro nodules of sulfate, probably primary anhydrite, and this indicates that those levels were probably evolving during early diagenesis in a subpartidal flat, while the light layers, I'm going to show you more details about those guys afterwards. Interestingly, some of those are folded in a convoluted way, which could be due to the retractation or the syneresis of microbial mat, forming kind of wrinkle structures. If you go to the analyzed light, what you see is that all the gypsum is pervasively recrystallized, forming twin crystals of overgrowth in a syntaxial way, if you want, and in some instances also fibrous or palisadic gypsum. This is not to be confused with cracks. There are many leaves in those gypsum that are inherited from the telogenesis, okay, of the basement during the upkeep. This is why we try to perform isotopic analysis of the mother water of the gypsum. So in this graph, what you see is the delta O18 versus delta deuterium of the mother water of the gypsum, and this is the meteoric water line. So those examples of typical samples of gypsum created by evaporation of marine water depart from the samples that we have taken from the Boukhalfa formation. They are aligned here along isotopic fractionation, okay, which indicates that they probably are recrystallized due to the, or formed in neoformation during part of the telogenesis in a closed system, progressively supplied by meteoric water. So the light layers, if we have a close look on the light layers, what we see is that they are interstratified at a laminate level. So, of course, the texture is perturbated here because of the later evolution of the system. But I'm going to show you close-ups, the two red frames over there, that allow to describe the ultrastructures of those laminae. What you see is that the variation in light is well, from the clear to less clear texture of the gypsum is probably related to the relative abundance of organic matter and or possibly also some clay minerals which have been trapped during the growth of the gypsum crystals. So this is the first close-up. You see deformation, so maybe those kinds of micro wrinkle structures at the bottom, at the top, or along the cracks. But if you are lucky, you can see a banding, okay, approximately well 0.5 millimeter thick laminae are regularly accumulated within those centimetric layers. So if we move further to magnification of those thin sections, we see that the 0.5 or well laminae that we have here are grouped into micro-laminae down to 50 microns, which is very small, and this is the ones that you can see here. So we have not electronic microscope analysis of this that far, but this is well, consistent with the growth of gypsum in saturated waters that makes possible the formation of those ultralaminae at a daily time scale. Superimposition of cycles in the space domain or in the thickness domain is consistent or is a reflect of a superimposition of cycles in the time domain. Would the response be yes? It would be a hint that possibly we have tidal cycles present in the gypsum, in the laminated gypsum of the Boukhalfa formation. So this is not a facious model because, well, we don't have time constraints. We have well, much field work that far, but it's just a proposal. So the bottom of the facious successions, which are well indicative of an overall rise of base level in a coastal domain, integrate the channel system, in which through the IHS possibly we record the influence of the tide, and then moving up we have the dolomite interstratified with the green clay. The green clay is indicative of weathering of the hinterland in arid conditions. It is dominated by kaolite, okay? And because of the time scale of formation of the dolomitic laminae, it is not possible, and I fully agree with Emma about this, to recognize ultralamination that would be consistent with daily cycles, which is perhaps, and this remains to be tested, not the case for the gypsum, which is above and which is conformably overlying the green and blue fascias in that cartoon. Okay, so we possibly record tidal influence, maybe annual cycles, as this is common in IHS, but moving up with more and more detail in the cycles before, up to possibly daily cycles in the upper part of the facious sequence. Okay, for the while, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Janine. Other questions?
I was a bit short.
Yes.
Emma.
It's just a curiosity. Do you have measurements of the sulfate isotopic composition of this?
Yes, it's the mother water of the gypsum, supposedly rehydrated after an anhydride stage, because that formation has been buried, okay, and then due to the unroofing, recirculation of meteoric waters could have affected the composition.
Okay, yes, I meant, sorry, I was wrong in questioning. About the sulfur, not the oxygen or the...
No, the sulfur, we don't have isotopic. That's a good question. We do want to do that in the next stage.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there another question? Sergio?
Thank you, Janine. No, just out of curiosity, but maybe I lost something. It's my fault. But what about the origin of the uppermost, the very top of your cartoon, the uppermost massive fascias closing the stratigraphy?
It's probably the evolution of the rise of base level in the coastal strata. So once you have enough permanent, let's say, water, gypsum precipitation takes over the rest of the record. And what we see, in fact, is absolutely recrystallized massive gypsum. We cannot see the alternations that are normally typical of lower areas of the system. So I suppose, well, in some places we can see twin gypsum crystals like this, which are typical, accordingly to Jean-Marie Rouchy. He has seen that many times in the Messinian especially. So it's typical from the growth of gypsum in situ in permanent salt pans. But this is difficult to see because this has been totally recrystallized in the uppermost and thicker beds.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bob? Yes?
A non-tidal question, if I'm allowed. I didn't see any silt, extraneous silt in there, as if there was an aeolian dust component. Given the high salinities you must have had, it must have been quite an arid environment, and I might have expected that.
In fact, you probably remarked that in the course of my talk I changed. I started with shales, and then I ended up with clay because the mineralogical composition of the shale was important for us. The green bands where we see dominant clay minerals are also bearing silt. So it's possible that part of that silt should be supplied by the wind. We have not much more data about that. I know other sections, not the Boukhalfa, but the other sections in the short branch. You see the laminated gypsum, but it's not fully gypsum. You have very, very thin drapes of silt and possibly clay, aeolian clay, above the lamina, indicating possibly a fallout, a very, very intermittent fallout in the pans where the gypsum is precipitated.
There was one last question.
So you mentioned kaolinite. Is it weathered kaolinite or primary kaolinite?
Well, you asked much.
Because if it's weathered kaolinite, can you differentiate your gypsum between the original gypsum and the weathered one? Because when meteoric water flew through the rocks, gypsum is quite soluble, so it will be dissolved and then maybe it could recrystallize and you have recrystallized gypsum. But do you have any ideas of if you can differentiate two sorts of gypsum or not?
The second part of your question, the answer is yes. This has nothing to do with the clay mineral composition from a mineralogical point of view. But it's true that part of the clay component is kaolinite, and in fact it is dominating in the Bouedma formation. I put that just on purpose, okay, because we are trying to characterize the hyper-arid setting of those coastal systems. The second part of your question is, yes, you have plenty of beefs, cracks that have been opened, okay, during telogenesis and infilled by fibrous gypsum. That gypsum was already there, but it was anhydrite. So the volume increase due to that recrystallization is indebted to the incorporation of mother water. Okay, and this is that mother water that has been analyzed, and this is where we see the influence of meteoric water within a closed system.
Okay.
Yes.
If,
Sorry to interrupt you. Perhaps you can continue
Yes.
later. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Lani.
Okay.